I first want to begin by talking about the differences between black women who want to divest and gender nuanced people who want to divest because we ultimately are divesting for different reasons, but the experiences parallel each other. Usually, black women typically divest from black male consciousness because of the gender based violence that they experience, because of misogynoir, and ultimately because black male consciousness has become Orwellian. Gender nuanced people typically divest because there are ultimately cultural motifs that are instituted by the hegemonic law of black traditionalism that govern our lived experiences as gender nuanced people. The idea being that black traditionalism typically centers around the black male experience and it doesn't make room for cultural intellectual pluralism of black women and black people born in gender nuanced bodies. In fact, as a motherist and an archetypal analyst, I would say that the very first divester was actually a black woman. It was Harriet Tubman. She was the one that actually led black people to freedom and during the time of slavery. And it was her desire to want to create an understanding of herself outside of slavery, outside of that siloed understanding of consciousness that ultimately began a movement of leading black people to freedom. So for black people, there is a cultural and historical component to divestment. It is a way for us to understand ourselves as black people within this new era of black consciousness. From an archetypal perspective, you would say that as Mukimne, the archetype of a Harriet Tubman emerges through our experience, that we are venturing outside of the realms of black traditionalism to then create a narrative for ourselves as black people born in gender nuanced bodies. That we are collectively as a people, as gender nuanced people, leaving this psychological plantation because of how black male consciousness tends to be very, very Orwellian and archaic. Another figure that is really, really important for gender nuanced people is that of Malcolm X, that the archetype of a Malcolm X then emerges to our experience as well. In a speech at the University of California, October 11th, 1963, Malcolm X brought up the idea of racial separatism. And that is ultimately how Mukimne view their divestment journey, that we understand as gender nuanced people that we are a people, that we are black people, and that we are a community of people within the community. Also, the same way that Malcolm X was, build your own water fountain, that we understand that as conscious beings, that we have the capacity to not only formulate our own understanding of our lived experiences as gender nuanced people, but we can then begin to embody that narrative, embody those archetypes for us to live a whole and complete life for ourselves. It is important for us as black people to understand that we are Mukimne, that we ultimately fall in the middle, that our experiences have nothing to do with Wanaume and Wanawake because we are Mukimne, we fall in the middle. Also, the archetype of the divine child also emerges through our experience. As I talked about in a previous video, that we as gender nuanced people possess both divine masculine qualities and divine feminine elements simultaneously, which are both elements of God, God being love. So that means that we are love incarnate. The divine child archetype also emerges through our experience because, like a child, if we understand how cisgendered black men are the divine masculine, right? And black women are the symbolic divine feminine, that we are composed of both of those elements. So we don't have to sleep with, we don't have to be with black women. And it is oftentimes black men who are more Orwellian or more traditionalist in the way that they understand our experiences as people. And therefore, a lot of older traditionalists, they still uphold this hegemonic law that has iced us out because during their historical time period, there wasn't an understanding of our lived experiences as people. Another thing that I think is interesting to note is that within the community, there is ultimately, a gender war that's being experienced by, black women and a lot of these red pill content creators. And that gender war is uniquely theirs. That is uniquely black men and black women's issue. That has nothing to do with gender nuanced people because we fall in the middle. That we have a completely different understanding of love. We have a completely different understanding of the relationships that we have to ourselves, to our partners, and to the external world and the collective. Also, since we are in a new era of black consciousness that is ultimately the third generation, the younger generation of black people now have a more relaxed attitude towards the experiences of gender nuanced people. And that's due to two major things. One of them being the weirdo signs, that as income inequality gets even more severe, especially within the black community, that now there is a lot more visibility of the everyday lived experiences of different types of gender nuanced people online, on social media, as they begin to tell their stories. A lot of black people, black men and women, their consciousness is siloed in such a way that black traditionalism creates creates these silos, right? That their way of thinking is archaic and ultimately oppressive to gender nuanced people and our lived experiences. So it's important for us to then take a step back, divest from the collective, and understand that we are Mukimne, that we are love incarnate, that we are motherist, and that we have a completely different understanding of our experiences as gender nuanced people and gender nuanced bodies.